But on this particular storm, we had been warned that a big storm was coming, a big nor'easter. And I'll never forget the day before. It was a beautiful day, and Henry Lind, our natural resources officer, was in front of town hall, and I mentioned something to Henry about the coming storm, and he said to me, looked up at the sky and says, "Yeah, this is what the old timers call a weather breeder." Calm before the storm.
Out west, there is a low pressure area that we will keep an eye on, because right now it's rather harmless, but there are some indications as it moves to the east, some of the energy from that system will be transmitted to the coast. And by late Sunday and Sunday night, there could be some interesting things happening down the coast. Just too early to speculate about that, though, and how exactly it will affect us.
The thing is, there's a big upper air low dropping down right behind it, and all of the computer indications are that there's going to be a monster of a storm develop down in this region, and then move slowly northeastward up the coast.
And it looks like a biggie. We'll have all the nasty details shortly.
So I took a ride down there just to evaluate what was going on, and as I was driving back, it was getting to be close to the high tide point. It was probably an hour or two before high tide. And one of the washovers that we had been experiencing was starting to see some seawater coming through from the ocean side into the marsh. And I probably was the last person that drove back off that trail before the storm, because and I made it through that one spot and looked back, and 2 or 3 more waves put several feet of water through that area, and it was no longer passable. And then the storm continued to develop during the day. At sunset, it was raging.
I lived for years in Nassau Light. Summers in a small cottage on the top of the beach, and then in the keeper's house at the lighthouse. Year after year after year, it was a beautiful place to be during that storm, but scary. And one of the most impressive things outside of watching the ocean is the sound of the wind, and the wind blowing between the lighthouse itself and the house, the keeper's house, was just tremendous noise. And then if you actually get down on the beach during the storm on the 6th, it was just a deafening roar, with the ground itself just shaking with each wave, and that went on for days. Probably around 4:30, I left the visitor center and proceeded to go home down Nassau Road, up Ocean View Drive, because I lived in the keeper's house to Nassau Light at the time. A friend of mine, Miriam Rowell, in London every winter, and I would move across the street from my little cottage up at Nassau Light over into her house, and house sit for her each winter. And she had just had shingles put on the house, and that night, the 6th, as the storm grew in intensity, the shingles just blew off the house, and water poured into through the second floor, into all the way down through the stairs. We had a major flood. The light itself went out, generators out. I remember the New York Times called. We did an interview with them as they heard the storm was growing in intensity off the coast. And I could see blue flashes from Nassau Light all the way down through Coast Guard as various electrical units and the telephone poles blew out. And I remember that night going to bed during the storm, living up on the 2nd floor. Anyone that has that Cape Cod license plate or gets a bag of Cape Cod potato chips will see that keeper's house and that window facing the ocean. Well, that's where that was my bedroom that night, in a big brass bed. I was not only afraid of some real serious destruction of the house from the wind, I thought the whole window and frame was going to blow in. So I just pulled the covers over me, and it was like it was like there was a ghost in the room, because the paperback books flew all around the room, and fine silt sand just blew right in the window, and the whole back of the room had a little sand dune at the bottom of the floor, where all that fine silt sand blew in, and water came in, and books everywhere. Well, needless to say, it was not a very restful sleep.
But the real brunt of the storm seemed to hit that night, the night of February 6th. So it was a howling rainstorm all night long.
It probably turned from snow to rain. Probably middle of the night, right after midnight, it started warming up. It seemed like there was warm tropical air offshore that was just mixing with all that humidity and moisture and rain, precipitation that was coming down, and that's when it changed, and it was all melted. It was all gone by the next day.
The morning of February 7th dawned, and very early I called the Eastham Police Department, just as I usually would do, to check on what was going on, but of course with special interest this morning. And I remember the dispatcher saying to me, "Oh my God, you would not believe the Coast Guard beach." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You should just get down there, you will not believe it. Everything's washed away."